Hello and welcome to this short video on constructive alignment. Constructive alignment is a theoretical concept for teaching and learning in higher education. It was devised by Professor John Biggs. What is it? The idea of constructive alignment is that learning objectives, teaching and learning activities, and assessment are all aligned with each other. Now, this may sound very obvious, but in practice we see that actually quite often there is a mismatch somewhere in this triangle. And this mismatch may explain why a course isn't working out the way it was planned. Let's first have a look at an unaligned course. Let's say that in our learning objectives we have stated that we want our students to be able to explain, relate, and apply. However, in the assessment we ask students to recognize and to describe. Here we have a mismatch between the learning objectives and the assessment. So what's the problem? Two things. Firstly, students mainly focus on what is expected of them in the assessment. This is fine as long as the assessment measures the learning objectives, but it becomes a problem when the assessment and the learning objectives aren't aligned. In the given example, students will primarily focus on recognizing and describing, and not care very much about explaining, relating, and applying. So these students won't be learning what we want them to learn. The second problem is that we don't know whether students who have passed the course have actually obtained the learning objectives. If a student has passed our course, he or she is formally expected to be able to explain, relate, and apply. But we don't actually know if that's the case because we didn't test for it. What's the solution to these problems? We should make sure that we actually test whether students have obtained the learning objectives, and not something else. In the example, this means that the assessment should test if students are able to explain, relate, and apply. We now have achieved alignment between the learning objectives and the assessment. In this way, students will focus on the right things, and we are sure that students who have passed the course really have obtained the learning objectives. A course can also be unaligned in a different way. Again, let's assume that in our course we want students to be able to explain, relate, and apply. And this time we have made sure that the assessment tests just that. But in this case, the teaching and learning activities have not properly prepared students to be able to do that. Let's say the course consisted of a series of lectures, and what students were actually doing was listening, taking notes, and at home reading books and articles. This means that during the assessment, it's the first time that students are expected to explain, relate, and apply. So what's the problem here? Students haven't had the opportunity to practice what they are supposed to be able to do for the assessment, and chances are that they won't do very well. This may lead to low pass rates and complaints from students saying that the assessment didn't meet their expectations and that the course didn't prepare them for it. The solution lies in choosing appropriate teaching and learning activities that will train the students to, in this case, explain, relate, and apply. This way, students are properly trained and the teaching and learning activities match both the assessment and the learning objectives. To conclude, we'll have a look at an aligned course. Let's say that the learning objectives of our course state that students should be able to select, analyze, and design. What does this mean for the assessment? It means that we'll ask our students to actually select, analyze, and design. Even if students only focus on the assessment, they will end up focusing on the learning objectives anyway. Also, if students have passed the course, we can safely assume that they are capable of selecting, analyzing, and designing. And what should our teaching and learning methods consist of? Well, I'm sure that by now you can answer this question. During the course, we should offer students methods that will train them to select, analyze, and design. This way, students will be well prepared for the assessment and are likely to perform well. Now we see that the third side of the triangle is automatically aligned as well.